luminaries, welcome back to CSI Crowdsourced Illuminations. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and select all notifications so you know when I go live or when I post a video. Today we are continuing our series, Book Nook. We are reading The Franklin Cover-Up, Child Abuse, Satanism, and Murder in Nebraska by John DeCamp. Settle in, get comfy, and enjoy the story. As always, if you hear any noises in the background, dogs snoring, barking, birds chirping, kids, music, anything else, just ignore it. It seems life goes on even when I'm recording these videos. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We are picking up today with Chapter 4, Cover Up Phase 1, The Police. In July 1988, Omaha police officers in the Robbery and Sex Unit received an unexpected visit from their boss, Chief of Police Robert Wadman. According to the officer's own account, related by Nebraska Foster Care Review Board official Dennis Carlson in testimony to the legislature's executive board, they took precautions to keep Waldman out of their work on Larry King. Excerpts of Carlson's remarks from the executive board minutes of December 19, 1988 show that the officers feared a police cover-up of King's activities from within the department. Quote, Officer Carmian told me some things which I found to be somewhat startling. I asked if he was interested in information regarding Larry King, and he said, yes, we are. We are conducting what he called a super-sensitive investigation of Larry King, and he said this investigation was so super-sensitive that they were not even using the steno pool in the Omaha Police Department. They were handwriting their police reports, and he also told me that Chief Wadman had come to their unit and directly asked if they were investigating Larry King. Investigator Carmian told me he lied to the chief, and we said no, we are not investigating Larry King. Okay, so that conversation took place on July 20th, 1988. After we were presented with that information, we had some concerns as to what was going on in the Omaha Police Department. We were concerned about if we gave this information to the Omaha Police Department, that what would they do with it? The investigation of Loretta Smith's charges did not go far in Wadman's department. Neither did the career of Officer Carmian. On the afternoon of June 28, 1988, immediately after Carmian's interview with Loretta, his supervisor, Sergeant Ken Bovasso spoke by telephone with Kay Schilling, Loretta's psychiatrist at the hospital. According to Bovasso's write-up, Schilling, quote, told this reporting officer that she has spoken with Loretta Smith since Loretta's discussion with Officer Carmian. Loretta told Dr. Schilling that she only gave Officer Carmian general information, but that she had no problem talking with Officer Carmian. Reporting officer told Dr. Schilling that sometime during the week of 4 July 1988, this reporting officer will assign Officer Carmian to revisit Loretta at the hospital in order to build up some rapport and possibly obtain more specific information. Carmian never came back to interview Loretta Smith again, as Loretta volunteered more horrific, detailed allegations during the summer. Richard Young Hospital and FCRB personnel were concerned about the lack of police interest in Dennis Carlson recalled in his executive board summary testimony, quote, Loretta was making more allegations against Larry King and others. These were allegations of the most serious nature. She was reporting that she had witnessed homicides. Investigator Carmian was contacted by myself one-on-one, possibly two or three occasions. I tell him that this girl's making more allegations, that she's opening up, she's telling additional information, she's beginning to relate better to her case coworkers and social workers. Would you please go and re-interview the girl? After Investigator Carmian received the information from the Foster Care Review Board, the information that I hand delivered to him, he never went back to interview Loretta Smith. In one of my telephone conversations with Investigator Carmian, I remember telling him this girl was now reporting homicides, and he said, "Yes, I need to get out there and re-interview this girl." One of my concerns, Senator, is the conduct of the Omaha Police Department. I don't know what's going on up there. I'm not familiar with the players in the Omaha Police Department, but I know that I hand-delivered material to an investigator, Investigator Carmian and Investigator Hoke left my office, and they seemed sincere. They seemed that they were going to investigate these allegations, and later it was as if air had been let out of a balloon, that all of a sudden they had no interest in even re-interviewing a girl who was saying that she had witnessed homicides, and I just don't understand it, end quote. FCRB Executive Director Carol Stitt testified, quote, "I would like to add something that was highly unusual in this case. Loretta's psychiatrist contacted the police in Omaha and asked them to come. Loretta's personal care worker, Ken Stoner, contacted the police. Richard Young employee. Kirsten Halberg contacted the police, as well as Adrian Hart, who is Kristen's supervisor. All those people had made contact, and nothing was being done." End quote. Not long after his interview with Loretta, Officer Carmian was transferred out of investigations altogether into a section called Research and Planning. At the same executive board meeting, Senator Ernie Chambers recounted a phone conversation with Carmian, quote, "When I called the sexual assault unit, they said he's no longer here, and that's when they told me that he was with Research and Planning. I finally got him, and I mentioned his enthusiasm at the outset, and that from what I had developed in terms of credible information being given to me, I felt he'd been transferred because he was getting too close to something, and his superiors did not want him to continue." So there was a silence. Then he kind of chuckled. He said, "Well, no, uh, I wanted this transfer. I've known of Carmian for years, and he's not the type of officer who'd want to be put into an office where he's the only one there. In fact, that might have been the creation of the department. Didn't even have a secretary." End quote. Carmian himself testified before the Legislative Franklin Committee in June 1989 that although he had been pulled off the case, he thought Loretta's charges were credible and deserved follow-up. Less than 2 weeks later, on July 5, 1989, Chief Wadman tried to get Carmian declared crazy. In a lengthy inter-office communications to Omaha Police Safety Director Pittman Foxall, a cousin of Larry King, Bodman announced that Carmian needed a mental health evaluation. Quote, "I am requesting a supervisory referral for Officer Earl Carmian to see police psychologist Dr. Stephen Sheretz. I am basing this report on the actions demonstrated by Officer Carmian that surfaced during the Larry King investigation. Prior to Officer Carmian's assignment with Research and Planning, He was serving as an investigator with robbery and sex unit under the command of Lieutenant Guy Goodrich. While in that assignment, Officer Carmian was involved as an investigator and did participate in looking into matters involving allegations that Larry King was involved in some sexual improprieties with young people. The investigation never did come close to supporting the allegations sufficiently for a charge to be considered against Larry King, end quote. One other Omaha policeman who was reported to have kept a file on Larry King, Officer Bill Skoleski, died of a heart attack. You guys, pay attention to the people that just randomly die. I know people randomly die all the time, and I guess, we're dealing with a wide swath of people, individuals here, but it seems like everybody is related to Larry King in some degree, and folks who try to interfere with Larry King's work or what he's doing ends up dead, fired, or somehow some other way indisposed. All right. In August 1989, Chief Wadman dismissed out of hand the criminal satanic horrors that Loretta Smith and other children had described to authorities. On Omaha radio station KKAR, the city's chief law enforcement officer chalked up concern about these allegations to the fact that some Omahans have a prurient interest of child abuse, of child sexual abuse, those kinds of things. I think that the media attention to that element of things is inappropriate. Regarding Loretta Smith, Wadman said, the primary witness was making statements that were very bizarre and were not founded in reality. Wadman concluded his KKAR interview by stating that the OPD and other agencies had conducted a thorough investigation, but the allegation led to a dead end. Robert Wadman was sworn under oath that he barely knew Larry King, that he had very few social contacts with Larry King. That's not what King says, however. In April 22, 1989, interviews with King and Wadman, Frank Brown of TV7 Omaha questioned them about an incident in which Wadman intervened at King's request to order the release of a suitcase seized in a drug raid. Brown. King acknowledges he is a friend of Chief Wadman's. We asked King, did he call the chief to get a suitcase released that had been seized in a drug investigation? Brown. You had that friendship where you could. King. Yes. Brown. You could call the chief of police and get a piece of evidence released? King. I felt that I could call anyone in this city. Brown. What was that suitcase? I've always wondered about what was in that suitcase and what was it about. King. It's really nothing. It was a relative of mine and he was staying at a hotel and I guess they had a drug bust or something. Brown. We asked Chief Waldman if Larry King had ever telephoned him to get a suitcase released from police custody. Wadman. Yes, I can't recall if it was this past year or the year before that. He did call regarding a situation and that information was forwarded to the unit responsible for the request. Brown. That did not compromise any investigation? Wadman. Absolutely not. And I'm very disappointed that this situation continues to be a protracted, but it was a situation that was routinely handled. I received literally hundreds of those requests, and those situations, and this situation was handled exactly the same way as the rest. Switching back to Larry King, Brown raised another question about a smooth ride he seemed to have gotten from the OPD. Brown, the Omaha Police Department had an investigation last summer into an alleged pornographic King. Brown, and you were cleared? King, I don't even know that they had one last summer. People make up things, people make up anything. You can hear anything about anyone. If you choose to believe, you will. If you choose not to, you don't. I choose not to listen to garbage and gossip. King had indeed been cleared, with the blessing of Robert Wadman. The Legislative Franklin Committee's record of Wadman's own testimony to this effect dates from October 13, 1989. Besides Wadman, the speakers in the transcript are committee counsel John Stevens, Barry, and Robert Krieger, and Wadman's attorney Kent Winery. Barry, are you aware whether or not there have been any ongoing investigations in Omaha regarding whether or not Mr. King has been involved with narcotics? Winery, maybe, may I just ask a point of clarification? Are you talking about ongoing but not concluded, or Barry? Well, I suppose I could ask a series of questions. Have there been in the past? Have there been any continuing? Have there been any ongoing at all? Do you know anything about Mr. King and Mr. King, or has Mr. King been a subject of a narcotics investigation? That's an area I want the chief to address, and I'm happy to have him address it. Wadman, I'm unaware of any of those. Krieger, the answer is no? Wadman, the answer is no, yeah. Barry, let me ask the very same broad question about Mr. King and the relationship to child pornography or pornography of any kind. Wadman, we had a situation where we were advised that there was a possibility of child pornography involving, no, it came in as a child pornography case. What happened is that there was a photographer who was taking photographs of young women, and in the course of that set of circumstances, a mother with her daughter called and filed a complaint with the police department, and the complaint involved a situation where her daughter was approached by the photographer to be photographed, and the photographer extended an invitation to this young woman's mother to come with her. They went to the studio, photographs were taken, and in the course of that, the mother became concerned over the photographs in some of the photographs that she observed at the photo studio, and then filed a complaint of concern that this was a possible pornographic situation. We investigated it, found the photographer to be, legitimately involved in the photography business, legitimately involved in conducting the photographs and getting signed releases and having a photography studio and so on. The only involvement is that this individual had subleased his studio or apartment from Larry King. And that was the extent of our investigation into pornography related to activities involving Mr. King in any direct way. This was the photographer Rusty Nelson described to Margot Georgiou by people who knew him as a pervert, and proven by her to have lied about his professional experience and resume. The pictures in his studio were frontal nudity shots of adolescent girls. Nelson described King as his landlord, not only, but as his boss. The investigating officers had compiled and filed accounts from several people about the lavish spending by King on Nelson's and other apartments, about his comings and goings in Mercedes-Benz cars, and other evidence of an unexplained leap in King's income, and about the common knowledge that King was involved with drug dealers and was a homosexual who liked young boys, quote unquote. Wadman, who had approached his officers, with such curiosity about any investigations of Larry King that they might pursue, swore under oath that he knew nothing about any of that. Chapter 5. Just how big is this cover-up? The Nebraska, the Nebraska Foster Care Review Board, which is not a law enforcement agency and is not equipped to investigate crimes, let alone prosecute them, in 1988 found itself by default the main recipient of reports of abuse from children and from caseworkers, which attested to the existence of an organized child exploitation ring in Nebraska and stretching far beyond. Expressing frustration and alarm that the Omaha police had failed to investigate reports of child murders and other serious crimes, even after many urgent phone calls from personnel at Richard Young Hospital, FCRB Executive Director Carol Stitt on July 13, 1988, met with the Nebraska's Republican Governor Kay Orr to seek help. Governor Orr told her to do whatever is necessary to secure an investigation. On July 20th, Stitt wrote to Attorney General Robert Speier to request that his office, the state's top prosecuting agency, enter the case. For the first time, somebody openly pulled together the testimony of Nellie Patterson Webb, Loretta Smith, and other children whose reports of abuse all cited Larry King. Pursuant to the Nebraska child abuse statutes, the State Foster Care Review Board is making a report of allegations of a child exploitation ring and respectfully request an investigation, wrote Stitt. She noted that in December 1987, FCRB had reviewed the allegations about a child prostitution ring centered on the Webb family's foster home. Then, quote, on 5/17/88, the Foster Care Review Board received a phone call from Kirsten Halberg, who is a previous employee of Utah Haley Girls Village and currently works for the Richard Young Psychiatric Hospital in Omaha. She was aware of Nellie and her youngest sister, Kendra's report to the review board. Ms. Halberg told me about 3 Utah Haley girls, a 20-year-old young man at Richard Young, and 3 youths at Boys Town, who all reported inappropriate activities with Larry King of Omaha. She also reports that a recent child exploitation conference in Kansas City, a detective from Kansas City, asked her when the Nebraska authorities were going to do something about Larry King. On 7/20/88, Kristen Halberg reported a 15-year-old girl at Richard Young who is talking about inappropriate activity with Larry King and also is alleging witnessing a murder of a young boy who said he was going to tell of the abuse he suffered. Along with the letter, the Foster Care Review Board turned over its entire file on these cases to the Attorney General. Speier assured the FCRB that he would do everything in his power to help and assigned the case to one of his top assistants, Bill Howland. As months dragged by with little apparent action by the Attorney General, Stitt and Dennis Carlson demanded a meeting with Howland, which was held in his office on November 22, 1988. Stitt described the meeting to the legislature's executive board on December 9, 88, as follows. When Dennis and I were in this meeting, it became clear to me that if Mr. Howland had ever read the materials we delivered to him in July, it was a long time ago. He didn't know major players' names in the case. Dennis did some rather tough questioning, and it became clear to both of us that nothing had occurred. The file was just a mess. I grabbed the file from him, reordered it. Dennis and I both left that meeting. I can speak for myself. And I felt full of despair, and I felt like all the optimism that we had that something was going to happen to not only help the kids who'd been abused, but to stop this from occurring to other kids. and many of the kids that I'm aware of were stale wards. Was not happening, nothing was happening. Now we see that we were just being put off. Yeah, we'll get out there, and yeah, we'll do this, and yeah, we're on top of it, but really, none of the officials had organized their investigation. Her fellow executive board member, Burrell Williams, added, quote, I think we became really baffled and puzzled on what was going on when you get all this information in front of you and nothing had or is being done about it. Dennis Carlson was also puzzled. Quote, I don't know what, if anything, either the Omaha Police Department or the Attorney General's office actually did. If I were doing the investigation, the first thing I would have done with that information is contacted Loretta Smith, who's making allegations that she had witnessed homicides, not a homicide, it's homicides. I talked to Loretta Smith's caseworker at Richard Young Hospital on November 22nd, and she told me that the last person that interviewed Loretta was Officer Carmian, and that took place on June 28, 1988. On November 3rd, 1988, Stitt again attempted to contact the governor to set up a still more urgent meeting because of the failure of the Attorney General's investigation to get off the ground. The governor's staff scheduled a meeting for the following week, but canceled the appointment the next day. The governor, according to her office, was not willing to meet, as Carlson recorded in his daily notes on December 1st. In the November 22nd, 1988 meeting, Howland once again claimed he would do everything he could, a claim undercut by the attitude of the governor. The Attorney General's office put one investigator, Thomas Vlahoulis, on the case part-time, but as the legislature's Franklin Committee was to learn on June 22nd, 1989, he did next to nothing. In this transcript of the legislative testimony, Vlahoulis is questioned by committee counsel. Counsel, as I understand what you told Senator Chambers, the information in your notes, which was important, was placed in the reports that you generated. Is that correct? Vlahoulis, yes, it was. Counsel, now, the conclusion I draw after reviewing that information is that you really didn't do anything between July and late November except for to collect some extraneous pieces of information about Mr. King's business interests and perhaps about his wife's citizenship status. That's my conclusion from reading the reports. End quote. On December 20, 1988, Attorney General Robert Speier was quoted in the Lincoln Journal saying that his office had acted promptly and professionally on all the sensitive information received on child abuse 6 months earlier. Yet the Nebraska State Patrol, the agency that would be called upon by the Attorney General in such an investigation, conducted its very first investigative meeting on the case on December 19, 1988, the day Speier was boasting to the Lincoln Journal about his alacrity. In the face of official inaction, Carol Stitt and the medical personnel responsible for treating Loretta Smith grew concerned about her safety. She had already been threatened, and the new charges she was making put her in even more danger. Stitt turned to still another agency, the Douglas County, Omaha and surroundings Attorney's Office, and requested a protective order for Loretta. When the Douglas County attorney filed the order, however, it said that Loretta was making bizarre statements, that she had been on the street for 2 weeks and that she was suicidal. Not only were these allegations untrue, but they could help ensure that Loretta be discredited in any future court appearance. The order had an even graver implication, as Senator Chambers observed during Stitt's December 9, 1988 testimony to the executive board of the legislature. Senator Chambers, Neither you or Miss Halberg said that the child is suicidal. Stitt, no. Senator Chambers, but that's in the court record, in the petition, on official document, and the child winds up deceased then, and if the result of a suicide, then everybody would have had prior notice that this child is suicidal, if you would, by the report, by the petition, and the court order. Chambers was also familiar with the person in Douglas County Attorney's Office who filed the order, Liz Krovic. Senator Chambers, now this is some information that I have, and maybe you don't. Are you aware that Lynn Krovic has some information given to her by certain professionals about some of the things that these youngsters have been talking about and making allegations, and she chose to do nothing? Were you aware of her involvement in that regard? Stitt, yes, I was made aware of that while we were trying to see what we could get done in Omaha. Vlahoulis, the part-time sleuth from Attorney General's office, later told Franklin committee investigators about another time Loretta ran afoul of Krovic. According to Vlahoulis's conversation with Krovic in January 1989, Father Val Peter of Boys Town had been approached by Loretta Smith, and she complained to him that the FBI and Krovic had intimidated her to such an extent while she was at Richard Young Hospital that she had not provided them with all the information that she knew. At the December 1988 Executive Board meeting, Senator Lauren Schmidt asked Carol Stitt what effect the gross mishandling of her case might have on Loretta Smith. Stitt answered, I'd like to say if the state continues to handle the case the way they've handled it, everything that this perpetrator has told them is being reinforced, that he has the power. There's nothing they can do. Nobody's going to help them, and that certainly has been what's happened so far. Okay, y'all, that's the end of chapter 5. So we've gone through chapter 4 and 5 today. And the next chapter is chapter 6, called The Destruction of Commonwealth Savings, Model for Nebraska. So thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll get this next one up here in the next couple days. Thanks so much, and have a great day. Thanks so much for listening here at Crowdsourced Illuminations. I'll continue soon with another reading of the book. Again, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And thank you to all my wonderful family I chose with my heart. Good night, love you, and bye.